Welcome, travelers, to another chapter. Thank you so much for tuning in as we get further into this book. Today is 1:53 p.m. Friday here in California, and let's get started. Chapter 5. Jaguar Woman. The markings on a wooden wall are howlings that a son can call to be sleek pelicans upon a beach. Our wings whistle as we reach the Jaguar skies. Michael McClure, for Shirley and Wallace. Agnes went down to the dinner but told me to stay in the room. I was not to eat. The rain passed and the full moon shone brilliantly, broken only by the tall branches of the ceiba trees. Everything looked different. The nervous flutter of the birds subsided as darkness enfolded the ancient ruins of Uxmal. Agnes and I sat on our red and black medicine blankets in the center of what Agnes told me was the nunnery quadrangle in the back of the Temple of the Magicians. A light, warm wind played with the silk fringes on our shawls. Our sacred medicine pipes lay between us as we sat facing each other. The mysterious stone and clay city around us loomed like a giant in the moonlight shadows. My doubts about why I was here had faded away with the smoke from our pipes. There was magic here, and I knew that great knowledge had been lost when the priests and priestesses of this city had been harmed. The magic of the earth beneath me rose up into my blood, and the earth took my spirit as her own. This certainly was a place where great wisdom was collected and shared. Slowly, like phantoms in the night, other women joined us. I didn't know who they were, and not a word was spoken. We sat a long time, sharing the silence. Agnes told me to shut my eyes and clear my mind of thoughts, to concentrate on an inner flame. A clay flute sounded off to my left, and after a long time I opened my eyes. Several torches had been lit on the steps leading up to a low building on the left of the quadrangle. A flat stone on four carved stone legs reaching knee height was in its doorway. The woman had organized into two lines that fanned out down the stone stairs. A woman stood before a raised stone. I could see copal smoke rising from it, and all sorts of offerings and flowers had been placed there. The smoke was so intense, it took me a moment to realize that the woman had her back to us. She was wearing a jaguar skin robe. Her arms and paw-like hands were outstretched in prayer, and then she blew water onto the altar and smudged copal incense over her body, purifying herself. She stood about 20 feet from us. She was saying beautiful and melodic prayers rapidly in Mayan, and the quadrangle resounded with her words. With the darkness, the ancient stone structure edged closer and loomed larger in my vision. The warm night air settled in around us like a velvety cocoon, shrouding us in a blanket of hypnotic pleasure. The woman at the altar slowly turned. I gasped and Agnes briefly rested her hand on my knee to still me. Great billows of great white smoke shone around the woman and snaked through the night. A ghostly figure. She was wearing a white jaguar mask that looked like it was carved out of stone. The black spots of the jaguar skin accented the shadows. With outstretched arms, she called my name. I gathered my pipe and offering bundle and walked up to the stairs to her. Agnes followed me. I walked through the cloud of copal smoke and sat across from the woman, who had seated herself on the other side of the altar. I sat on grass mat and Agnes sat to my left, also holding her pipe. Then Agnes handed the woman her pipe across the altar and she laid it there. I repeated the gestures with my pipe. My eyes were riveted on this woman. She held her power with such cat-like majesty that I was transfixed and terrified at the same time. I knew she was a woman, but at certain moments during her ceremony, when she squared her shoulders or gripped something with her strong hands or put on the jaguar gloves, I could have sworn she was a man. She looked at me steadily. In broken English, slightly muffled by the mask, she said, "You have shown me that you can serve the shaman sisters. Now I know that you can serve the spirit." Deftly she removed the mask, turning it over. She poured a liquid into it and drank from it briefly. Her face was painted solid black, and I could see only her eyes, which shone like the moon. She handed the mask to me. I took it, holding her eyes with mine. The mask felt smooth and heavy, like a rock. I slipped something that tasted like wine and then placed the mask into her painted hands. She replaced it over her face. Although I could not see her clearly, and never did, I knew she was familiar. I offered her the bundle I had brought. Agnes had instructed me to bring liquor with copal, tobacco, chocolate, incense, candles, and many flowers. She accepted it with many beautiful Mayan words and laid the contents out on the altar. From her mouth, she sprayed some of the liquor onto the altar near several objects standing nearest me, behind lighted candles. I looked at the beautiful array of sacred objects on the altar. There were blossoms everywhere, candles, stones, sticks with feathers, hollowed out stones with objects in them, a wrapped bundle, a crucifix, herbs, and many more objects obscured by the shadows. I felt an intangible force field running from the altar to me, coursing like a finite magnetism through the trunk of my body. "Knowledge is recognition," she said, watching my eyes caress her altar. "You recognize her, don't you? Now you know of her power, even though you don't understand it." Sitting across from me, curled up on her mat like a large feline, she nodded. She began speaking in a forceful way that took me immediately into the most sacred spot inside of myself, my medicine place. "Stand," she said. She adjusted me until I was facing outward and could see two lines of women still standing on the stone steps. They seemed to be watching attentively. "For too long," the priestess said, "our sisters have lived without taking their power. You have a great enemy, the one with red hair who is near you now. You stalked him once, but that was long ago. Out of your feelings of fear and guilt, you have become his prey. He has injured the lights around you. He stalks you now. The stalker must be stalked. We here are your sisters. What happens to you happens to us. Hold forth your hands." I held them out to her. She took off her paws like gloves and placed them on my hands. I moved my fingers and sharp claws sprang out. For a moment my vision blurred, but then became extremely acute. Jaguar woman drew off her robe and fastened it around my shoulders. The woman on the steps came silently forward and encircled me in a half moon. The women were all staring at me and seemed to be focusing their attention on my navel. Behind me, I felt Jaguar woman with her arms upraised. I felt her power and the power of the altar radiating towards me. I looked at Agnes for reassurance, but she had the same intent look as the other woman. I was getting warm, feverish. All at once, I shot upward out of my body and I was flying over the top of the trees. Then, I was on the ground, running amazingly fast through the jungle, which I seemed to understand remarkably well. I halted and sniffed, then turned on a diagonal southward. In that instant, I realized I was a jaguar spirit, and the scent I was following belonged to Red Dog. I bounded up a hill over tightly curled grasses and then slowed to a stealthy, noiseless gait. From behind a tree, I saw a Red Dog with his back to me. I crouched, ready to spring. He turned and saw me, a look of terror in his eyes. I growled and he stamped his foot and shouted, "Hey, hey," he yelled. He started spinning until he completely disappeared into a funnel of wind that moved off quickly. I charged at this whirlwind, but it kept just ahead of me. I wanted to leap into it and claw it to pieces. As I pursued my prey, I felt my body breaking up. I woke up in my bed at the hacienda to find Agnes rubbing ice over my forehead and cheeks. Very, very interesting chapter. I thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next chapter.